Under the motion, this House believes that punishment for major crimes should be decided by the society and not by judges or juries. I'd like to welcome Prime Minister. Here.
May I begin? In the status quo, there's a risk of bribery when the punishment is only decided by the judge. And not only is the judge possibly biased, but the juries are a very selected pool of people, which means that most of the decisions are very limited in terms of thinking the other side's perspective. Therefore, we think that it is only fair to actually judge these major crimes based on, which we think that these punishments should be based on the decision that is created by society instead of only the judges and juries. So first, I'd like to define some key terms. By major crimes, as the info slide says, it is criminal offenses done that harms a person or group of people in a significant way, such as but not limited to murder, terrorism, and rape. And punishment is the legal decision from criminal justice system to punish criminals. And society, we're going to have a national referendum, which means that we're going to be having a voting system where these decisions would be made by society, and the judges and juries are just a criminal court that currently exists. So we would like to clarify a stance, which is that we should give punishments for major crimes solely from society, and we would also like to make a clarification that this person or individual was already being guilty was already proven, and people will only be deciding the severity of the punishment and how he or she should be punished for his crimes. So in my first argument, I'm going to talk about, are the juries and judges the right actor to decide the punishment? Our second argument is going to be about how do we bring justice to victims? And our third argument, which is going to be explained by DPM, is how do we help the criminal justice system in overall society? So first, I'd like to move into our first argument about, are juries and judges the right actors to decide the punishment? So we think that an impactful decision, like the decision to punish major crimes, should be decided by the people. When we have a large impactful decision to overall society, we think we're having the decision to majority, and we think that in contrast to judges and juries, the society would have larger and broader knowledge and understanding. And also our side acknowledges the fact that, and we understand the credibility level and the professional career of the judges. We think that for major crimes that not only affected one individual, it should be left to the society to decide the punishment for the major crimes. Because when major crimes, no thank you, such as terrorism or a hate crime occurs, we think that those crimes impact overall society, and we think that it is only just for these societies, which are partially the victims, to actually make these decisions. Also, we think that when criminal court makes decisions, it is not doing it for that one case.
Sir?
They're doing it, no thank you, they're doing it to potentially serve as a model for other cases. This means that as important of the decision is, if we allow this to continue happening, it's going to continue in a vicious cycle where they use this one example and continue having the same amount of punishment for these same crimes, such as hate crimes.
Sir?
Yes?
Don't you think the victims and the society is too emotional to actually judge this?
So although we believe that, although we agree that there may be some cases where the society may be, influenced by emotions, we think that it is still better than having this one selected group of people that might not even be connected, for example, to like the crime that itself happened. For example, if a hate crime happened against a minority. So. In addition to this, we think that although it might be we believe that in some cases the society might be interpreting these differently than the judges and juries. We think that they'll still, at the end of the day, be able to make the right decision for the punishments. And we think that even in worst cases, when the society itself might be biased, we think that it would at least be better since there will be people who will actually speak up to these crimes that are happening. Because if we only had judges and juries, these judges and juries wouldn't be. Because they might have a potential bias, there isn't anyone to stand against this and give backlash. While when there's society, because minorities and minorities exist, we think that these kind of biases wouldn't exist. So in addition to this, an exemplary decision like the punishment for major crimes should be done as fair as possible. We think that most of the time when we talk about major crimes in status quo, they're usually hate crimes such as rape or minority groups or murder. We think that most of the times, currently when the judge makes a decision, he isn't making a genuine decision. What I mean by this is that judges, we think that it is difficult for judges to make decisions when sometimes it is the opposite of what he or she stands for. Because, no thank you, major crimes like we think that major crimes like these are judged in the Supreme Court that is nominated by the president. We think that because most of the times in this political climate, these punishments wouldn't be the right decision because the Supreme Court is always pressured to have the same stance as the president to keep his job job and to keep a good image. Our second argument is about how do we bring justice to victims. By identifying these flaws of juries and judges, we clearly see that these major crimes specifically target a minority. We think that this decision shouldn't be made with people in power, but for people who can actually sympathize with the minorities who are raped and actually sympathize with minorities who got harmed directly by these individuals. For example, the best example of this, no thank you, is domestic terrorism in the United States. For example, if a gunman was on loose and if this person was white, in government's eyes, they wouldn't see him as a terrorist, but rather, and we think that this would lead to a less severe punishment. We think that because this bias continues to exist in the society, we have the duty to actually solve this problem. So with this established in the example, we think that in this example, there's a specific group targeted by criminals, which is the African Americans and people of color. Therefore, we think that decisions should be made by people who actually understand the situation, who can actually sympathize the amount of harm that was done to these minorities and victims, and actually we think that it is the responsibility of, and we think that it should be decided by the people instead of the judges and juries. We would also like to add that that if the decision was made by the people and not the judges and juries themselves, we're going to be because these people are able to sympathize. We think they'll be able to make the right decision, and we think that even in worst cases where society may be biased, we think that because many of them are emotionally biased, and because they could possibly give backlash to majorities, we think that this would be much more fair case. Thank you. I'm proud to propose.
Speaker spoke for 6 minutes and 11 seconds. I thank the Prime Minister for his excellent speech. To open the opposition's case, Leader of Opposition, please.
So, Mr. Speaker, we believe that throughout their speech, they have conceded to the fact that once they pass this motion, the standard of actually deciding the punishment of the society will be whether they can sympathize with the victim or whatnot. However, we believe that this is a very wishy-washy stance and a very irresponsible stance that the government is taking, and that is why we are very proud to oppose. So before moving on to rebuttals, we would like to clarify that in the debate, the actual burden of the opposition side is proving why the exclusive harms of passing this motion, of actually letting the society judge the severity of a punishment of a certain perpetrator outweighs the benefits to a very, very big degree, and that is what we have to prove in this debate in order to take this debate home. So that being said, let me move on to rebuttals. So about his point about bribery and how these judges and juries are so unsuitable for deciding the crimes, we believe that about the point about bribery, certain natural checks and balances exist in the status quo. We can educate the judges and the juries if that's a problem, and we believe that the harm coming from the government side of actually letting these judges and juries judge certain cases is very, very minor, and therefore we believe that if bribery and impartiality of the judges is the problem, we believe that is the reason why we have 5 judges, we have more than 5 or more than 7 judges in one case deciding whether a criminal that committed a major crime should be punished to a certain degree. And that is why there are certain watchers and there are certain juries to match the natural check and balance of the impartiality or the problems of the judges. Therefore, we believe that their argument and their ideas do not stand. And the other substantive arguments that clash with our arguments, so that I will be including my rebuttals in my arguments, so therefore I would like to move on to my arguments. So first of all, let's talk about why the society, the citizens themselves are not the right actor. So Mr. and Mrs. Speaker, the reason why you are judging this round, we are judging this debate, is because you are the judges, you have the expertise, you have the experience in the debate, and we are not deciding whether who won this debate by a vote along all of these people, because they do not know whether because even though they may understand the points, they do not know which team has gotten the more logic or more examples or whatnot. That is an example of reason. That is the exact reason why you are judging this round. You are judging this debate. So first of all, let me explain why the judges and jury are the people that decide the suitable punishment. Because they have the expertise and the experience, the judges are the ones that already have the experience. They already know how to react to certain cases. They already know how to react to certain cases where the victim is a certain group of people, where the perpetrator is a certain group of people. They know how to consider the motivation of the perpetrator or the victim, and therefore we believe that is the reason why the judges are the people that are actually suitable in the status quo to decide the punishment, to decide the severity of the punishment of a certain perpetrator. So we believe that is the reason why the the judges have been educated, the judges have the expertise and the experience, and that is the reason why they are impartial in the status quo, and they can decide whether a punishment is justifiable for a certain perpetrator according to the principles of the proportional justice system. And therefore we believe that because of the exclusive expertise that these judges and juries have, that is what makes these judges and juries suitable and justifiable to decide what is more fair and what is more effective in protecting all of the members, all of the other members of the society, including the perpetrator, including the victims, and including the possible victims in the society. The second of all, let's talk about why the society is so unsuitable in this case. Now, 3 layers of biases. First of all, they are very emotional. Second of all, they are very easy to manipulate. And third of all, they do not have any expertise in regards to such cases. So first of all, let's talk about why they are so emotional in this case. They do not have a lot of impartial beliefs. They do not have the impartial ability to actually judge whether a case is impartially suitable for a certain punishment or whatnot. So we believe that the standard that the government has conceded to, which is sympathizing with the victim, is something that is very unjustified in this case, because the relatability should not be a certain standard to decide the severity of the punishment. If a majority of the people were to relate with the victim, for example, if the victim was a part of the majority group of people, that is similar with the majority group of people, and therefore the majority group of people can relate, that is the moment where the society is actually more emotionally connected to that person, to that victim, and therefore putting a more severe punishment on the perpetrator, even if the perpetrator did a same crime as another minority perpetrator. Second level of analysis, they are very easy to manipulate because of media. The media is very irrational. They like offensive ideas. They like the radical views that are portrayed by the citizens, by some certain extreme people, and that is because that is the way the people are concentrated on that post, on that idea or whatnot. So therefore, this makes it extremely hard for the mass public to be exposed to the reasoning and logic, because they want the actual result. They want what the perpetrator actually did. They want who the perpetrator actually is, not why the perpetrator did that or why the victim was in that situation or whatnot. Therefore, we believe that they are in a very emotional state and very easy to manipulate state. That is why the the society is very unsuitable in this case to decide the punishment. But second of all, our second argument is about why there are practical harms that can affect the society. So first of all, if the society gives a lower punishment that the judge would in the current status quo, that is a situation where the crime proportion is much higher than the proportion of the punishment. So, for example, if the poor killed their employer and did a crime, the society and the social media empathize because they empathize, as the government tries to characterize the perpetrator with the perpetrator, and just simply assume that the employer abused that poor person or whatnot. When the society gives a lower punishment to the perpetrator and decides that he should only be in jail for 1 year, the problem is that first of all, they cannot fully punish the criminal, which is against the principle of retribution, and therefore destroys why the law is actually there. But second of all, the criminal gets out to the society without being rehabilitated to an enough degree that they will not be a significant harm to the society. But second of all, if the society gives a bigger punishment than the judge would, there is a radicalization of crime, because a criminal, for example, if a person rapes a woman after being at the spot crime, they will realize that they are going to get killed by the society anyways, and that is the reason why they are going to murder that woman in the first place. Because they are going to get a 100% punishment of 100 after doing a crime of 70 or 80, and that is why we are very proud to oppose.
6 minutes and 31 seconds. I thank the leader of opposition to the government's case. Deputy Prime Minister, please.
So a clarification before I get into my rebuttals, right? First of all, the example they came up with, which is about the President Trump, first of all, is irrelevant to this debate. Why? Because we're debating under the motion, we're only regarding the cases of major crimes, and because all the judges who are actually judging the major crimes are not appointed by the President itself, so we don't see what the pressure they're talking about is coming from, right? So moving on to rebuttals, my rebuttals involve around 2 main points, which is about who is the right actor in the first place, and secondly, if this actor judging this actually is effective to society and actually protecting them from the crime, protecting from the perpetrators. Right? First of all, about the actors, right? First of all, they talked about how citizens are able to sympathize, thus that justified for the citizens to actually decide upon the major crime, right? First of all, they also considered, yes, the expertise expertise lacks from the citizens, but they didn't provide us how they're going to fulfill that expertise itself. Because expertise is something very important in this case, because criming or those kind of actions in the status quo should be judged through the laws, right? What is the purpose of law if we're only going to judge upon like certain metrics like sympathization or like emotion, right? The purpose of law itself is actually is trying to give equal standard to each individual when there are certain crime cases. That is a moment where there is certain democracy happening, when it is all equal to all certain perpetrated all cases, and that is the reason why we have something called laws in the status quo in the get-go of the debate, right? So moving on to how they talk to how citizens understand this better, right? First of all, there are no mechanism how citizens understand it better, any better than the judges who've seen this kind of cases for a long time, their whole life. They've been doing this for their whole life. We think the judges are actually the better ones to actually understand the cases because they've seen other cases before, and they've seen so many victims before, and they've seen so many perpetrators before. And there is a moment where we say the judges actually have the better understanding of the case itself, better than citizens. But furthermore, we don't see how understanding, actually sympathizement, is actually important in deciding which kind of punishment is given to the perpetrator in the first place, right? Because the understanding is not relevant when you're deciding how much punishment we should give to the primers and how much punishment we should give to the perpetrator, and eventually let them go back to society and rehabilitate and actually do better, be better in being a functioning member in society, right? Because that is the case, there's a purpose of actually punishing the perpetrators, not to actually just say that you did something bad, but actually to say that you did something bad. Thus, you have to look back on these actions. Thus, you have to go to the jail. Thus, you have the potential to rehabilitate and go back to society. Because there's a purpose of actually giving the punishment, we don't see why understanding or sympathizement is actually in the metrics. So actually, that's crucial when they're deciding to punish the major perpetrator in the first place, right? Secondly, about the effectiveness itself, right? They never provided to us any mechanism how the society actually punishing the citizen, punishing the perpetrator is going to effectively deter the crime rate or actually solve the crime in the first place, right? But the only metric they brought about is the bribery. First of all, the bribery they keep talking about is able to get check and balance in the current status quo because there are more than one judges when they're actually deciding for the major crimes, and that is a moment where we say this is going to be a check and balance. And secondly, there are so much watchers in this certain major crime cases, and there's a moment that watchers are going to be able to check and balance the certain actions that the judges do that may not be as justified, right? Also, it is at least better than even if we say those kind of bribery exist, it is at least better than the case where it is so emotional, and so when this so emotional, citizens are going to decide for how much punishment it is going to go for the perpetrators, right? Also, moving on to the point about how it is not such an assumption that the judges will definitely give less punishment to the perpetrator compared to society itself, right? When there are cases in the status quo, when there are cases in the crime rate where the poor people actually kill the rich people, we see that society it is very easy to manipulate the society in a way that this person was so poor, so they deserve to kill the rich people. And those kind of thoughts that the society has to go through actually will make them to actually punish them less compared to the judges. So we don't see why the assumption of saying that how judges will punish the citizens, punish the perpetrator less compared to society works in this debate, because there's so many cases where the society is able to punish them less compared to the judge, and compared to the judge if you let the society punish the major crime rates. And there's a reason why we say that argument does not stand, because they have not provided to you those mechanisms and the metrics clear, right? Moving on to the last argument, which is about how rather it will increase the crime rates if you let the society decide on the major crime rates, major crimes, right? First of all, because the media will now start to portray of the certain crime cases and of certain crime what happened, and in order for the society to be able to judge what kind of punishment they're going to give to the perpetrator, they would have to go through looking the whole process of how this person was killed, how this person was raped, right? Those kind of things is first of all not good for the victim closure, because the victim has to constantly go through the process of looking at how myself got raped, how myself got harmed by this certain perpetrator. But second of all, because there's certain actions, as the government side has characterized, it's usually done through hate crimes where the minorities may kill the majority and whatnot. And there's one where these minorities who had this hatred toward the majorities and they had all those incentives, but was afraid to actually commit crime, will now get motivated even more to commit more crimes to society. That is the reason why this will actually rather increase their crime rate. Why? Because the people who actually, the perpetrator himself, who always has the potential to create crime, will actually look at the cases itself and look at the process of how other people kill these people, how other people rape these people. And there is a moment where we say these people example, these perpetrators who have the potential, it will actually maximize the potential as a whole if they actually portray these conducting cases in media for every single major crime cases we see in the status quo, right? Because for the every single major crime cases and the media itself is able to manipulate it so well, we see that the societies are going to get manipulated in the first place. And secondly, it is not going to help the victim closure. And thirdly, because it is going to increase the crime rate, and we have proven to you in this debate how there are so much practical harms compared to the benefit itself, and we don't see any benefit itself coming from the government case anyways in this whole from the get-go of the debate. And the only benefit was that the society sympathizes more, which is very wishy-washy. We don't see any mechanism coming from that, and there's no evidence nor examples of supporting this particular topic, and there's a reason why we're very, very proud to oppose.
Welcome the rebuttal speakers. Come forward, please.
First of all, we don't understand why the opposition side is accusing us for having no mechanism at all when their arguments itself did not have any mechanisms, because their first argument was basically that the judges are the best actors, and second argument was just that society is unsuitable, and we believe that their arguments itself did not have mechanisms, and our Prime Minister was able to clearly prove to you why the society is the best actor and why our side is able to help the victims the most, and our DPM told you how our side is able to deter more crimes from happening in the future. So before moving on to my three clashes in today's debate, I'd like to rebut a few things that the DLO talked about. So first of all, she said that she talked about how this poor is going to be killing the poor people that are going to be killing the rich is going to lead to the society sympathizing with the poor, and it's going to be leading them to be punished less. First of all, we don't think that this is true at all, because even though some people might be sympathetic, if we were to be judging the situation, most of us would say, well, still murder is a wrong thing, because all of us know as a common fact that murder is a wrong thing, and these kind of harsh crimes are something that should never be done, no matter what the circumstances are. So we do believe that the society already has this kind of a basic knowledge. But secondly, even if this was not true, we still believe that this harm is still less compared to the benefits that we bring to you, which is that the society would be able to give much more fairer punishments that would be correlating to how the victims might be feeling, and also to what should be fair, what is the right justification, what is the justified punishment to give to the criminal. And secondly, they talked about media manipulation, but we don't think that we think that even if this was true, and even if the media manipulation was to happen, we think that it's going to be much more harder to manipulate an entire society than just a few judges or juries. So we think that it's going to be even more harder for the criminals. For example, if it was a rich criminal that raped somebody, then we believe that this person would be less able to bribe or manipulate an entire society instead of just a few judges and the juries. So then I'd like to move on to my first clash, which is who are the right actors. So the first question that came down was, are the juries and the judges the right actor? The opposition side's first argument was that the judges have much more expertise and therefore they're the right actors. First of all, we don't think that this is true at all, because many of these judges, even though they went through a lot of expertise, most of them are white males and they come from a privileged background, as our DPM has already told you. But secondly, even if this was true and the judges have much more expertise, why do we see even if that was true, why do we see so many cases of these judges making decisions that are biased, that could have biases or could have a lot of lobbying? And let's assume that this didn't happen, and their case about the judges having expertise still stands. Even if we were to assume that, even if we believe that the society is not there. First of all, society is not making decisions like looking at they're not making decisions such as is this person guilty or is this person innocent? And we already clarified here from our first speaker, and we believe that the society isn't going to be doing any of those things, and all they're deciding is the punishment of that criminal. Secondly, this will only happen for major crimes, not like giving a life sentence to somebody who stole an apple. And thirdly, because it's a major crime, it directly affects the entire society, and therefore the society should be able to decide this. Yes?
Is the relativity so important when the judges give punishment according to standards of the law?
We believe that relatability is important for the victims because a lot of cases the judges may make a decision without having a consideration of how the victims may feel like. Because if you're a society and if you're a human being and you think in the perspective, the society will be able to think in the perspective of the victim a lot more. For example, if there was a case where somebody killed if somebody kills somebody and that was the victim's brother, then we believe that the society will be able to relate to this much more because, for example, if I had a younger brother, then I would be able to relate to this fact and feel more sympathetic toward the victim and try to give a fair punishment towards the criminal. Secondly, are the societies the right actor? They said that in their second argument that the society gets too emotional and therefore they should not be a right actor. But we still believe that the society, even if they get emotional and irrational, why is that so bad? Because they weren't able to tell us why it is so bad for the society to get emotional towards a person that committed a very bad crime, for example, rape or terrorism even. So if we were to say, if the society was to get really emotional and say they're going to give a life sentence to somebody that killed 10 people, we don't think that this is that much of a problem. And our second clash is how can we help the victims? The opposition side basically did not have anything that was relating to how they're going to help the victims. But we believe that the proposition side was able to clearly bring to you how our side is going to be able to help the victims because the society is going to be more sympathetic towards the victims because they're going to be able to understand the cases of the victims and the situations of the victims a lot more, and they're going to be able to make a decision that would be having the consideration of the victims a lot more. And secondly, in the perspective of the victims, because now they see the society trying to help the victim and trying to give a punishment to the criminal according to how the victim might be feeling, then the victims might actually be thinking that they're not alone in this world, which could be helping even more for their rehabilitation and being able to adjust back into the society. And we believe that this is really important because the victims have done nothing wrong in this case, and we believe that the victims deserve to live a proper life even after this crime happened, and that is why it's so important to help these victims. Thirdly and finally, what is better for the overall society? So we believe that for the overall society, our side is able to deter these kind of criminals from committing these harsh crimes because first of all, they're gonna know that the society will be the one that are giving them this punishment. So even if we were to say the society is irrational and it is gonna give harsh punishments, we actually think that might be a good thing because if the criminals know the fact that they're gonna be ended up getting a harsher punishment in the future if they commit this crime, then we think that this is gonna act as an even larger deterrence from committing this crime in the beginning at all in the first place. So we believe that for the overall society, our side is able to give much more fair punishments and have more consideration of the situation of the victims a lot more and be able to deter more crimes in the future, and I'm very proud to propose. Thank you.
So, Mr. Speaker, in today's debate, we want to emphasize the point that relatability should not exist in the case of deciding the punishment itself, because we do believe that punishment, when it comes to punishment, the first priority is whether it is just, whether it is proportional, or whether the victim gets the much closure that we can provide you, Mr. Speaker. First, going on to our first clash, which is about who is the best actor who can provide justice in today's status quo. So our first point about our society actually emotional. So the government have conceded to the Prime Minister conceded to the fact about how society themselves are emotional and they are actually better compared to the judges that don't tackle the problem, right? First of all, we buy this point because we do tell you that there is no certain mechanism in why judges won't tackle the core problem. Second of all, we do tell you that the standard itself is very wishy-washy in this status quo. For example, when one woman actually killed a woman and one man killed a woman, the punishment that the society gives are going to be different, right? In this kind of circumstance, at the end of the day, in conclusion, what we see is the trust of law and government being very wishy-washy and very unclear in today's status quo. Third of all, we do tell you that these kinds of the society themselves are not informed in the first place because they have no information, no evidence whatsoever, and even if they do, that is certainly going to decrease the victim's closure, which I'll be elaborating further in my second clash. And fourth of all, even if we do say that these are groups that are relatable and informed, we believe that the result that the judges give compared to the result that the society gives are very guaranteed in the long term, because what the judge actually considers is how to protect the society in the long term, how the society is going to get protected by these kinds of perpetrators in what kind of fields, such as these kind of imprisonment or whatsoever. Second point about are judges themselves a reliable actor in today's debate. The government actually talked about how judges are bribed, they are pressured under Supreme Court, and also there is a corruption at risk, right? So first of all, the point that they are nominated by the president at the start of today's debate is that since the president's goal is to protect the society, since the citizens actually nominated this president is because they want to protect their society, right? And since the president actually, the reason why the president nominated this judge to be in the Supreme Court out of all the other judges is because this judge can best decide justice. This judge can best decide who can make the better, who can protect the society in the future. We characterize these judges as judges that have gone through these kind of experiments, have got these kind of degrees of law school, and also they even memorize these kind of certain laws, and also are having also have information and knowledge about the history of law itself. So we believe that which evidence they have the capability of choosing which evidence is fake, which evidence does match this kind of court case at the end of the day. What the society cannot do, since society do not have the capability of deciding whether this evidence is suitable or whatnot. We believe that the judges themselves are capable of doing this. So at the end of the day, we believe that they became judges to solve these kind of major crimes at the first place, Mr. Speaker. We are the ones who can guarantee a just punishment for these kind of perpetrators at the end of the day. Going on to our second clash about who can best protect the vulnerable stakeholders who are the victims at the end of the day. So first of all, about victim closure, government had intervened to our point about how relatability itself is important, so society is better at making these kind of decisions, and since judges cannot relate, right? First of all, in order for the society, since so let's concede to everything what the government side states about the victim closure is true, right? Then in order for the society to actually decide which punishment they should give, it is under the premise that these kind of societies should be exposed to the evidence, to the process of how this court case happened, right? So when we do say that in order to do this, these kind of society need to know the process and the steps and evidence, what kind of events happen. We do tell you that when in the victim's perspective, when I see how I got raped, where he stabbed me, how he shoved me in that room, when I see in media all these people saying how he took off my clothes off, how he tied my hand and it violated me, when the victim actually sees that these kind of information, these kind of evidence that is so private to them are exposed in the society at the future, if this motion passes, we believe that that is the case where victims' closure is definitely getting violated at the end of the day. We see massive damage coming from team government, Mr. Speaker. And also, when they talk about how judges cannot relate, we believe that this is the exact reason why the judges are the best actors, Mr. Speaker, since judges can provide a clear stance of not only being biased towards these kind of victims' perspective, but also having the responsibility to rehabilitate these kind of stakeholders back to the society. Since the judges do take a balance in how to distribute these kinds of punishment at the end of the day, we believe that these judges are the ones who are capable of giving and protecting the vulnerable stakeholders at the end of the day. We're in our situation, our Deputy Prime Minister exclusively told you about how crime rate itself can increase at the end of the day. We see no intervention coming from the government side, Mr. Speaker. We do tell you that the crime rate will increase because in a case where the society gives less punishment, in a case where the society actually gives less punishment than already what the judge is actually giving, when the other criminals, other citizens who are thinking of causing crime at the first place do see these kind of information in the media, since media is such a vast thing that they are vulnerable to all stakeholders and all the society, we believe that it is certainly possible for these kind of other people to actually increase the crime rate since these kind of deterrence effects do not happen at the status quo. Since we are the ones who can guarantee a better society which actually gives you closure for these victims, which actually does not have the relatability at the end of the day, which we do not want, Mr. Speaker, we do tell you that we are the ones who can actually protect these kind of stakeholders. And not only that, we are the ones who prove to you that judges themselves are much more capable of deciding which evidence, which kind of information, which process actually leads to which punishment, which can give a proportional justice and a proportional punishment to these stakeholders at the end of the day. We are the ones who can guarantee a society where balance is going to happen and protect these kind of stakeholders, and that is why we're trying to oppose.
Mr. Speaker, one clarification before I get into my speech, right? The government side did not rebut to our point about how we cannot protect the victim culture itself and how it is going to increase our crime rate, which is the strongest point coming from the opposition because it is very detrimental when it comes to the effectiveness and the self-defense itself. So that is the reason why we say our point stands, right? So there were two main burdens for the government to actually prove in this debate, right? First of all, they have to prove to you why the society is much better than the judge, and secondly, they have to prove to you how it is going to practically benefit the society itself, right? Firstly, about the society, right? Mr. Speaker, for the society, their only mechanism and the metric they came up with is that the society is able to sympathize with the victim, thus they know a better way, a solution, the punishment for the victims, thus they are fair somehow and for the victim, right? First of all, that does not stand because we provided to you throughout this whole debate based on the three main points, right? First of all, we talked about emotional, because the society is so emotional, which the government side has also conceded upon, because you're so emotional, your standard itself is so wishy-washy, because, for example, if you can relate to the victim so much that you're gonna be like, oh, they should get a death penalty. For example, if you cannot relate to the victim so much, then you're gonna say, oh well, that was reasonable for this person to get killed. Thus, I'm not gonna provide them with a very harsh punishment. Thus, this standard itself of being emotional and how relativity is actually decides on how much punishment we're gonna give actually proves how the emotional state is actually making the decision of this society be very, very wishy-washy. And secondly, with the relativity, we say those itself, the sympathization itself should not be the standard because the standard of punishing the perpetrator should depend upon how we can actually justifiably punish this perpetrator, not depend on how I can relate to the victim, right? Because there's a standard, the actual standard we should actually do for the judges, and that's the reason why the judges are a better actor, right? Lastly, about the check and balance, because they have been continuously pushing the burden for us to prove how judges can be more fair. We say there's so much check and balance existing as there are multiple judges and as there are watchers, and because there are also more check and balances from the society coming from, and because there's so much check and balances in the media they're portraying, because there's so much on the deterrence factors that the judges should also obey the law because it is their obligation to obey the law, because law is very standard and because law is very objective. We don't see how the judges cannot be fair in the first place because their job, and they get educated for years and years to actually be fair, actually be objective, and there's a reason why we say judges very, very objective compared to this emotional citizen, right? Secondly, it's a practical benefit for the society, right? Because first of all, they actually talk about how we should protect the victim itself, but in a criminal code, Mr. Speaker, actually the society itself is important because society, we're punishing the perpetrator in order to benefit the society. There's a reason why the society actually protects the society better will actually win this debate, right? First of all, we provided to you how the judges will be more expertise because they regard things like potential rehabilitation for the perpetrator and how much we should punish is a very standardized metric, and there's a reason why judges can be better in actually providing a better punishment in order to actually benefit the society as a whole. Because the judge is better at doing that, that is the reason why we are actually better at proving to you the effectiveness of it, and because the judges are able to punish these people in a just form, in a very fair form, there's a reason why we should obviously let the judges actually punish for the major crimes. There's a reason why I'm very, very proud to oppose.
For their case, to confer, and shake hands.